Good afternoon. My name is Joan Jennings. I'm the chair of the Public Art Committee, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's Wednesday, January 13th at 2 p.m. Marissa, will you call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Jennings,
Here?
Ms. Gregory,
Here.
Mr. Meals,
Here.
Ms. Robinson,
Here.
Mr. Sallow,
Here.
Mr. Stackhouse,
Here.
Ms. Oberlander.
Okay. Okay. Mark, do we have any guests?
We do not have anyone in attendance at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to hear a motion to approve the minutes of the December 8th meeting.
I move.
Bill, second.
Second.
Trish, is there any discussion, any corrections, comments? Hearing none, minutes are accepted as submitted. We're moving to old business, the current project updates, the illuminated art boxes. Thanks to Tom Funchen and his Public Works crew, the illuminated art boxes are all installed along the sponge docks, and they did get them up pre-Christmas. I'd like the PAC to take a closer look at the images and let Diane know if any of them need to be relocated or otherwise tweaked. The concentration was just to get them up and installed. So, you know, if you feel that an image would be more appropriate in another location, just let us know. Let Diane know. Diane will be doing a press release about the art boxes sometime in the near future, hopefully by the end of the week. Diane and her team have created a brochure featuring all the images with artists and their contact information. There's a copy in your handouts. I'd also like to look into QR codes for the boxes and replacing Theodore Iannu's image in the prototype art box, which was 20 by 30, with just a text sign giving the public information about the website and, you know, how to access more information. Does anybody else have any comments about the art boxes? Have you all been down there to see them?
Yeah, they look nice. Yeah.
I haven't seen them at night. I've seen them during the day.
Yeah,
How difficult is it to swap out the art? I know the actual.
very easy.
Okay, so that's a pretty,
Right, there's a lock on the top corner of the box. And if you unlock that, the side just flops out. One slides out, the other slides in.
perfect.
So it's just a matter of getting the guys up there on the cherry picker. Christopher Still is working away at Advent Health. He's almost complete. Mark, would you project the detail image that Christopher sent us, please? So as you can see, it's kind of super realistic and typical of Chris Still. I mean, everything is just absolutely perfect, you know, in terms of, you know, the real shells and the items. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the whole thing being done. Elizabeth Indianos in the Cultural Center mural. The mural is nearing completion. And Mark, could you project some of the images Elizabeth sent us about, this is basically a wide look at the whole mural. She's working on completing the sky, and I believe it's kind of hard to see on the slide. The last center piece over the door is going to be an owl. That's going to be the last piece to come into it. But the detail and the colors are just absolutely amazing. Elizabeth suggested getting stanchions and velvet ropes similar to what we've got here in the Performing Arts Center to distance the public from the mural when it's complete. So does anybody have any comments, or Diane, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know that's kind of your domain.
I think we'll wait until it's done and then determine what needs to be added. you know,
Right,
at that
yeah,
time,
as I said,
sure.
right now it's a suggestion. Robert?
Can I have some, I know it's really too late to do this, but I think we need to be a little careful. And, up front in the very beginning part of these processes, like these murals with a lot of images representing who we are, our diversity, direction, and stuff like that. I think there's an image that's kind of troubling to me, and that's the one African-American person is over on the extreme right-hand side in the corner, standing over a rattlesnake. And it's just a, it's just unfortunate that happens that way. It's almost like it's an add-on, and it's in an unfortunate place with an African-American person and a rattlesnake in such close proximity.
Yeah.
Not that the snake is any danger, but to the African-American, but the thing that it's off to the side, and it's hard to see.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm speaking accurately at the moment, but I think the mural is sort of chronological from left to right with the latest images being on the right. And I know the figure is Annie Dabbs, and it's probably the only individual in the mural who's still alive. Obviously the sponge diver is symbolic, but it starts with the Spanish conquistadors and and the Indians, and goes through the crackers, which down here is not a pejorative term, the cowboys, and then to the sponge divers, and then to kind of modern times. So I think that explains the positioning, Robert, if that makes sense.
I'm quite sure there were African Americans alive here before she was born, though. I think that's the thing. I'm just saying that we need to be careful in murals of content and defining who we are. I mean, we're really interested in diversity and in representing all people in our community. And, I can almost see a black person looking at it and says, in action movies, the black person is always the first to die. That kind of a thing, and it's just a sensitivity issue, how you read images and stuff that I'm just bringing that up as a cautionary thing,
Right.
So, you can see there's a rattlesnake right underneath her.
Mm-hmm.
And that rattlesnake was here way before anybody else was.
Yeah.
So there's a sensitivity thing there that,
Yeah. Well, as you said, it's a sensitivity. I frankly didn't read it that way. I read it as a chronological representation. And, I had been told that it was supposed to represent Annie Dabbs. So,
yeah.
and she's,
Yeah,
as I said, still with us.
I don't know the chronology
Right.
of the thing, and that was a real person.
Mhm.
I didn't know that, and I mean, there's a lot of symbols of other people in there, and then all of a sudden we have a real person. It's
Well, I believe a lot of them are real people and are historic figures, and except obviously for the sponge diver, who's kind of ubiquitous. But I know that Elizabeth is going to be preparing a key, somewhat similar to what Chris Still does in his paintings. So, explaining the significance of all the different figures.
that
And,
would be
giving us-
helpful, but I'm just making that observation.
Right. No, I appreciate it. It's, does anyone else have any comments or observations? Okay. Okay, moving on to the Sponger Sculpture Project. With the holidays, I've been unable to do any further substantive research, but I'll remain in contact with Shannon Peck Bartle about, getting some more hard research and some facts about some of the research that she's been doing on the Black cemeteries in the area. Okay. Discussion and vote on the Elizabeth Indiana second mural proposal. Diane was kind enough to escort the members of the PAC individually to comply with the sunshine laws to see the space in the Cultural Heritage Center and to consider the second proposal in relationship to the first mural in the existing space. Part of the project would entail repairing the walls. And I'd like to have a discussion about, anyone would like to weigh in on it? David, do you have any thoughts? Just go.
Well, I know at first we didn't know how big the project was going to be, because it is a lot more than she's going to add to it. At first, I just thought it was like 2 little panels or something, but it's going to encompass the whole room. So I think that adds a little bit more value to the second proposal.
Okay, Trish?
Yes, I have sort of mixed feelings about it. Okay. I'm a member of the Art Association, and for many years, we have used the Cultural Center for our month-long December show. It's a big, it's a big deal for the association. So we've used the walls downstairs, all the walls and upstairs and so forth. So on one hand, selfishly, I would like to see the walls, be able to be used for that purpose. But on the other hand, this is why I have mixed feelings about it. I can visualize how beautiful it would be to walk into that room with those gorgeous, colorful paintings all over the room, and what an impact it would have on people. So with that in mind, I want to see the project go ahead.
Okay.
Personally. Yes.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, it was really good for me to have a chance to take a look at the art itself and the room and the space. I'll preface anything I say beyond this point with it's strikingly beautiful. The colors, it's very vibrant. I think it lends itself to a wide audience that would appreciate it. On the downside, I take a look at the space, and spatially, I'm wondering if it's going to be too much in that small of an area that it actually kind of, brings the room in. So it's a lot going on in a small space. So I'm wondering, and I just throw it out there for everybody's, thoughts, if it's, better to leave it with the impact that it has with the entrance to the auditorium and not kind of, because if you're going to put the ropes around to keep people back, you're really going to take that room and make it almost a walkway, is what it's going to become to get into the auditorium. So just in thinking of the space, that's my only concern, thinking less may be more,
Okay.
and more may be less.
Okay, Lucianne?
Yeah, I share a lot of these sentiments. I think it would be like walking into a jewel box in some respects. And yet my reservations are, maybe we need to hear from Diane about Tarpon Art's use of that space and whether that sews it up for the foreseeable future and limits its program capacity. The other reservation I have was mentioned at our last meeting, and that is it's a significant amount of money going into a space that isn't readily accessible to a great number of people, like an outside space. I think we're driven right now by the convenience of Elizabeth being on site and having insurance, and that's kind of a short-term thing. I'd like to be thinking longer term about the use of the space and the accessibility of it.
Okay. Trish, did you?
Yeah, and just in commenting on Lucianne's comment, the Heritage Museum is basically the same thing. I mean, it has all these beautiful photographs, artwork of Christopher Sills and so forth, and it has limited, availability for the public as well. So, I mean, I really can't see that being a problem. I mean, it's open, the events for the Cultural Center are open to the public.
Robert?
There's a number of things. I mean, Bill brings up that when you put a stanchion, you put the velvet ropes around, you're going to be standing in about a 10 square foot area, and people waiting to go into the theater and something like that usually wait in that room. And, but the reservation I have about it is that it's too much. There's too much in that room. It's a very bright, bold mural that you walk into and see. I think if you had murals on either side of that, it would take away from that impact. And I think the walls aren't really conducive for that. If the walls didn't have any windows, it would even be more claustrophobic, but I could see painting the sunset and the sunrise on that. But I think you mentioned earlier that she's going to have a key for all the images and stuff. I think the best use of those two walls is to put the key on the east wall and the key on the west wall for those paintings, so you can identify them. And that can be a nice presentation of the key. It could be a line cartoon etched in or printed on plexiglass that sort of hangs right in front of it, that gives people a chance to point and pick and stuff like that. And it's not going to make the claustrophobic thing. That kind of thing on the wall isn't going to require a velvet rope in front of it. You'll probably get fingerprints on it. People pointing at it and going this way and that way to inform people that the African American on the right-hand side is a real person. That's alive, which adds some interest to it. So I'm not a voting member, but that's my opinion.
Right. Michaela?
Hi there. Sorry I couldn't make it in person, but you'll be glad I won't be spreading any germs your way. Anyway, I actually agree with so many of your points, Tricia. The first time I went into the Cultural Center was for one of those shows. And so taking away that extra wall space downstairs, I think would be missed. I also agree that the painting itself is beautiful, but it might lessen the impact if you paint all the way around because the room is simply too small to pull that off. Liz Indiana's an example that there are places like the Stanza della Senatura in the Vatican and so forth, which have all four walls painted, but those are significantly larger than the room we're talking about here. So I really appreciate Diane giving the time for each of us to go and see it, because I thought it was actually the entrance room rather than the one that was really in. The other part is, I'd like to reiterate, we have a wonderful sculpture outside. We have a bike rack paid for by the public art money, and we have an expensive mural in this. We have to serve the larger Tarpon Springs community. And so even though, again, I'm a non-voting member as well, I think we should spend our money to put it more broadly, possibly in an outdoor place, maybe in the park or somewhere, because we have really great art at the Cultural Center when this mural is finished. So that was it.
Okay. So I'd like to get a more definite consensus. If you're in favor of the mural, can you raise your hand? Okay, obviously it's not something that people want. Diane, could you just answer Lucienne's question just so we get it
Sure,
on
I'd
the
be glad
record?
to. Yes, the Cultural Center, since it's been closed for so long, people forget just how much it was used, but we normally have about 5 different performances throughout the year in the theater in the Cultural Center. And we also work with the Tarpon Springs Art Association, as Trish had mentioned, to do exhibitions and things. And also they have art shows. And that's something that I was hoping to do more of when the Cultural Center does open. The library director and I have been talking about various classes in there for adults and children, as well as I'd love to have additional exhibitions with Tarpon Springs artists, photographers, the visual artists, sculptors, all kinds of, different disciplines. So it's to be determined, but it's a great space. And I have to agree. I think that the mural is looking fantastic. The vibrancy of the colors and everything, it's got such an impact. And when you walk into that room, I agree with what you're saying, is that I feel like that is the main event. And to put something on the other walls with all the distraction of the windows and the doors on the opposite end is going to take away the impact of this beautiful piece that Elizabeth is working on. So that's my thoughts. And my only other concern would be to have paint and something going on in that room, which would, keep us from using it for an exhibition or something of that nature. So.
Okay, but I think we're all in favor of the key, and I like Robert's idea of putting, breaking it up into the two segments and putting a key on each side. Is everybody kind of happy with that?
Yep.
Something just occurred to me too, Diane, while you were talking. Everything now is like multimedia. I wonder what would, again, I'd like some comments about, putting a small flat screen TV and maybe one of those niches between the window and have like an ongoing dialogue about the components of the mural playing. Does that
Funny.
appeal to anybody?
Funny you mentioned that, Joan.
Uh-oh.
Tarpon Arts is actually working with Christopher Still, and we will also be working with Elizabeth, because what we would like to do is create a video of his paintings and have him explain all of them in the Heritage Museum, and also have Elizabeth do the same with her painting. And then we'll have that available to the public to watch. So yeah, that is definitely on our docket.
All right.
So great minds think alike.
Okay. So unfortunately, we'll have to let Elizabeth know that the PAC is not endorsing the proposal. On to the Sisler Field murals. Diane and I were talking about this, the call to artists. Now that the holiday is over, we will reissue the call to artists. But I'd really like the PAC to reconsider doing one mural there, because I think just trying to get an artist to do one mural there for $1,000 is not engendering any information. I mean, any interest in any of the projects. So, there are 5 distinct spaces there, and I think to do all of them, it would be $5,000. I don't think it would be that expensive, but we might get much more of a response. I know Diane has done a yeoman's job of networking with a lot of different arts organizations, going all the way down to St. Pete, the Creative Pinellas, and getting the call to artists out. And to get no responses to it is kind of, indicative of the fact that it's just not creating any interest. So I'd like to know, how you all would all feel about that. David, should we start with you, or?
So what you're saying is nobody's responding to it at all?
Diane, I don't believe
No
so.
one-
Not one
no.
person.
No, it could have been that it was during the holidays that we put this out. That's why we went ahead and decided to do it again, once the holidays passed. So the deadline for this particular one now is February 26th, to give people a little bit more time. So as far as where I've put it out, it's already been sent out on social media. I do have it with the St. Pete Arts Alliance. They are going to put it on their opportunities section of their website, as well as socially in their social media. Creative Pinellas is going to go ahead and do the same. And then I got a great opportunity. Tarpon Arts is a member of the Florida Association of Public Art Professionals. And so I sent our call to artists to them, and in their next newsletter, they're going to be sharing that. So that'll go throughout the state of Florida. So, I mean, we'll see what we get, but it may just be that it's too small of a, yeah, because this is going out to probably more seasoned artists than novice. It possibly could not maybe attract the attention. I'll have to leave it to our artists in the group to speak to that, but that's why we were decided to maybe put it back out to make it a little bit larger project to see if that would glean a little bit more interest. So I'll give that to you to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I think it would be good to do all of them, you know,
Mhm.
yeah.
David, did you have a?
So there has been a monetary number that's been put on each piece.
Well, the
For
thing
these
is that this harks back to our liability insurance
Okay.
conundrum. Mark Licouris, the city manager, determined with the city attorney that if a fee is $1,000 or under, the artist would be considered a limited contractor, I believe is the term. And they could be included under the city's liability policy. So it would just be the straight $1,000 fee plus an allowance, reasonable allowances for materials. So probably the maximum it would cost to do all 5 walls at Sisler Field would be $10,000.
Okay. So 1,000 allowance on each one as well,
Right, so 1,000 for each artist fee plus,
materials.
yeah.
Okay. Well, perhaps it was because of the whole ongoing debacle with the election.
What election?
Yeah, exactly. In the season, maybe perhaps it would be just to wait till next meeting to see what comes of that. Maybe put out another response and see if anything comes back.
Yeah, the response has been put out with the one project and the deadline of February 26th.
Okay.
Increased or just left with the one for now?
So I think with the allotment of the extra $1,000, obviously they could probably do it with paint and everything for under what, $300-400 extra, do you think? So
Yeah,
that would
well,
be-
estimating super high side, I figured it would be like 1,000, but that's like super high side. It's probably more in the neighborhood of what you're talking about.
Because I think that might spark a little bit more interest if they know they have $1,000 to spend in materials and everything else. Perhaps. I don't know if that was on the flyer.
It didn't specify an amount, just said that we could, that we would be reimbursing supplies, so reasonable supplies. So I guess anybody who's really interested will probably, I'm sure, inquire about what's their max.
I agree with that.
Okay, Trish, you were already waved in unless you,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought David was.
No, that's all right.
I kind of waited,
Bill?
yeah.
I'm still interested in doing something a little bit grander than just the murals at that location. When we take a look at public art and where we have it located across the city, we've identified Sisler as a true opportunity where we have a lot of public that goes to, and there's very little there. I'd still like some conversation about something grander, and I don't know what that is. And I defer to others to, whether it's some sort of sculpture, and I'm not thinking of something bronze that's there. I'm thinking something that's a little bit more interactive that gets children, because that's our target at that particular location.
Right, so do you think we should bag the murals all together and just do something
I
major?
think we should allow this one to go because, I think there's some opportunity to do a mural there, but I'm struggling with looking across the fields and seeing murals on all these little locations. And I'm wondering if it's going to appear a bit cluttered or.
Well, right now, it just seems kind of ill-kempt. If you drive down Mears and just see all of these buildings,
Yeah.
and they're all painted different colors, and it's a hodgepodge of different stuff, so I
So
thought.
part of that would be a coordination of all those little tiny structures then with, okay, well, there may be some merit to that. then,
Right.
To be inclusive of all of them.
Okay, Lucianne?
I have one question, which is, how does the rec department feel about this?
Diane, I guess we haven't run it past them. Do you think they'd?
I don't think they'd be opposed to it. I mean, because, you know, I think it would enhance the ball field. And I know that in several Board of Commissioner meetings, I know that the commissioners have talked about wanting something at, Sisler Field. So, I think they would be, in support of it. They wouldn't have to maintain anything new, so.
Yeah,
think-
thanks for reminding me, Diane. This has been on the commissioner's wish list for almost 2 years now. So,
I don't think it necessarily has to continue to be murals, but, they definitely have mentioned that quite a few times,
mhm.
the location.
Do you have any other comments, Lucianne, or?
Just what I've said before, I feel we've overused our mural hand.
Like, as I said, it was on the commissioner's wish list.
It feels like low-hanging fruit
Right.
to put a mural out there, and I just, would like to do something grander if we.
Sure. Robert?
It was brought up about the locations of where the different murals are. There are different spots and things, and it would be kind of a cacophony if there were 5 different artists doing that. One way to do that is if you had one artist do that, and they could unify the whole space, making a whole presentation about it. That would be grander in a way. It would cost more. The artist would probably, because of the limitations, the artist would have to come up with a, insurance for it, I think. Or you could do some creative contracting. I mean, we've always brought this up, never gotten anywhere with it, but you keep trying in a way, is you could write 5 different contracts for $1,000 each. I mean, we always get the lawyers looking at us like we have 2 heads when we do that, but we don't know why it can't be done. It's just that it's never been done, or people think it's never been done. But it could be a commitment, a series of commitments. You do this one, then you finish it, and then you do that one, then you finish it. It'd be the same artist designing the whole thing, the whole concept. Like who would that attract, to deal with that? And you'd have, you might find some people that are intrigued with that because it's a problematic kind of a project. And some people really like to solve those type of problems.
Yeah. That's a very interesting idea. It's not something that we'd considered before. Thank you. Michaela?
I love the idea of having one artist do 5 contracts and basically go from one to the other, but that the whole project would be hinged together, so it wouldn't be a hodgepodge. I also like Bill's idea of doing something possibly, sculptural, more kinetic or so. So those are the 2 ideas that I find the most fascinating. I don't know if our budget will hold for something bigger, if we do something bigger in other locations, but if we do that, I think either one of those sound really good.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do is, we're coming up on Lucianne's and Innis Park. So I think in terms of looking at what she's going to bring to the table, then we can get maybe a firmer idea of where we're going with expenditures. But I think the idea that Robert had of doing, the 5 murals by one artist is a fascinating one. And, have you driven by there and looked at the buildings at Sisler Field?
Oh, yeah, I have.
They're really rather tatty looking. They're painted in all different colors, and, I think anything at this point would be an improvement, but that I think would be great. Lucianne?
We've also talked about mosaic. So if we get to the point that we're doing a call, can the call be broad enough to include any surface treatment, not just a mural? And that might bring some more interest to it.
Sure. I guess my only thought would be, would anybody be willing to do a complex mural for $1,000?
I think we're talking about something with a much bigger budget.
Okay, other than the the murals, just doing a wall of one of the buildings at Sisler.
Yeah, I'm adding to the comments that we ought to do a bigger, more cohesive project.
Okay. All right,
Lauren?
at Sisler. Yes, okay.
Joan,
Okay.
excuse me, can I just weigh in one?
Sure.
I just wanted to mention that all these calls to artists have already gone out for this
Right.
project. And, with the Florida Association of Public Art, giving us space in their newsletter. With this call to artists, I would hate to change it because that would look really bad. So can we just go ahead and pursue this, for until like the end of February as is and see what we get.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we do get, an artist, then maybe we can, talk about the 5 different
Right.
that we like, that you like. And then maybe talk about another place where we can, do something, larger too. So
Okay.
just, to let this one go through, I think we need to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good idea to just defer it until possibly the March meeting.
Probably, yes, we'd probably have to because the deadline is the 26th of February.
Okay, is that all right with everybody to just, since everything's out there already, to just go with it? I mean, if we don't get any responses, then the point is moot. If we do, then we can review that proposal and, if we get 1 or 2 and they're really not quite up to snuff, we could just choose not to go with them and go with another alternative. So, okay. Excellent solution. Okay, we'll defer to March. Okay, Bill and David, you're up. Recycling container sculptures.
Well, it took an interesting twist at the end.
Yes, it did.
David did some great research and I did some research as well with 2 different vendors and came up with at least what the pricing would be and some of the alternatives. But as all that was coming to being pulled together, it appears Public Works already has some of these compactor units in the city. And I don't know, Diane, if you were able to locate or get an idea from Tom where they're located.
No, but they're probably pretty hidden, I can tell you that. They're not out for public to see, kind of thing.
So I think what we could do is possibly look, because it looks like he's going to be renewing the contract with Waste Management. And when they do that, they can bid out for some of these. And I think if we could have a hand in perhaps the location of them, it may suit the need that we were going to pursue with doing this.
Right. Well, long ago and far away, we proposed either painting or wrapping the utility boxes around town. I'm sure you've seen them in other municipalities, where they've got artwork on these aluminum utility boxes. And we found out that, I don't know whether it's because we use Duke Energy or what company, but they wouldn't allow us to do anything to to those boxes. But it sounds like almost like a similar project to take something that already is in existence in a municipality and decorate it.
Were you able to find any in different colors, David? Did they provide that or?
So they had the option of doing the vinyl wrap,
Yeah.
things like that. I'm sure if you paid them an X amount, they would actually paint them, but who knows what that is.
Yeah, the
'Cause
big
they-
belly only was the dark gray. That's all they came in. But they said the same thing. Everybody wrapped them.
Mhm.
Or you could have them painted, but they have to be done properly.
Mhm.
But it sounds like the next thing is to really find out when Waste Management is going to, and find out what options.
One thing you might want to consider though, they're very big and I don't know if they would be approachable by the public. One thing you'd have to consider is that, they might see it wrapped with some artwork, but I don't know, we need a sign to say, hey, put your stuff, what is this, kind of thing. So
these are really industrial
yeah,
size.
because it's very commercial, it's a very commercial product. So, just think about that, as well as that, is the public who you want them to use it? Are they going to understand like what it is for?
And perhaps in the
kind of thing.
negotiation, he can have 1 or 2 of those as part of the contract. The smaller ones that may be more approachable. So probably.
No, we could talk to Tom.
Yeah.
Right, so you'll follow up
Yeah,
with
David,
Tom?
any,
And David?
And then Tom, I guess, I'm not sure when procurement is doing this. Usually our procurement department puts that, out. So we'll have to, I'll find out that out for you.
find out when, anything else, David, that you found that,
I think that's about it. So maybe we can just kind of tag along on the
on the
project
waste
and
management?
see if we can add anything to it, and that would help our budget as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was a little shocked at $4,800 for the Big Belly.
It's a little,
Yeah, it was $4,800 per unit.
big,
Now, I didn't
big
ask
budget
for,
for Big Belly.
I didn't ask for multiple units. You got your price down with more units.
right.
But
Wow.
yeah, for the solar powered. And I guess that sends messages back to Public Works when it's near full. And so it's interactive with messaging to.
One of the other things that occurred to me that you might want to just poke around with is, I wonder whether Waste Management itself would be interested in partnering with the Public Art Committee to do artwork on their Big Belly. It's worth an ask.
It is. That probably should be coordinated with Tom so that
Right.
we don't mess up his contract. So probably the next thing is for us to try to get some interaction or, communication with Tom and his group.
I also think that that's something that we can do after the fact too, to install in there. Maybe just have an outside contractor come in and build the boxes or whatever, if they're encapsulating art or they're just have some type of paper behind it, whatever it is that encompasses that or wraps.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can be done afterwards as well.
Right. Well, we were in touch for a while when we were still considering the Artist Alley concept with the company that did the applique process for Chris Still's mural on the Macris building. That was, again, Robert, I'm in your school of creative, get around the lawyers strategies, and I thought maybe if because they're bonded and insured, I thought that, if an artist created an image and it was put on an applique and the applique bonded and insured company could put them up, no harm, no foul, and we could do the project, but that didn't work either. The insurance was still, a requirement. So we hit a dead end on that one.
And
Okay.
Again, I still think I at least have some interest in getting that K-12 artists, whatever we would decide that
Right.
would be. There are side panels that can be added on these units that you could very easily slip their artwork in and change it out.
Mhm.
And again, I'd love to see some of the students in Tarpon Springs,
Mhm.
get their artwork out in public and maybe receive a stipend of some kind
Right.
for doing that. That kind of,
Okay, so you
Given
two
that-
guys will follow up on that, right?
Right.
Okay, great. Lucy Ann, this is the one I'm waiting for.
I hope I won't let you down, but the holidays did happen.
Yes.
But we have had some developments, and most of it to Diane's credit. She managed to snag one of the rare telephone appointments with Tom Trask before Christmas. And really, he has green lighted the project, at least from a legal standpoint. He says that we should have an agreement called a Declaration of Covenants that would allow the city to place a work of art on private property. And it would have provisions that retain the city's ownership, but also allow the owner, if need be, sometime in the future, to request that the city reclaim it and remove it. The city would need to carry an insurance policy to protect the property owner from liability. The city would maintain the work and would need an access easement to allow its workers to come onto the property to do whatever maintenance work is required. When we're closer to the final project outline, he Mr. Trask would be available for a Zoom meeting. I ran all this by the family. They are in general agreement. And there is the added advantage that the son of the property owner is a commercial real estate attorney in Tampa and would work with Mr. Trask
That's great.
to come up with an agreement that everybody's happy with. I have asked Lynn Whitelaw to join the subcommittee, and he is very enthused and will bring a huge amount of knowledge on the arts in Tarpon Springs to that group. But I'd like to hear ideas from subcommittee members, if not today, because I'm springing it on you, maybe in brief memos to Diane about the direction of this project. I know we had talked at one point about landscape art, but since the property is now, it's clear that it's privately owned, I'm not sure that is as appropriate a kind of project. We've talked about a kinetic sort of sculpture, but there are many, many media that we can consider. And I just personally would love to see the project develop as a celebration of the arts in Tarpon Springs. A musician owned the property. The Inneses were involved in the neighborhood, not necessarily the property itself. And the Becketts, who owned the property in the 40s, were very interested in art. She was a painter, I believe, and they collected broadly. So there's a real art relationship to that location. We all love the visibility of it right there on Riverside Drive. So it could be spectacular. But I would like to go into the subcommittee with a wealth of ideas from all of you. So.
Right. Well, it sounds like as much as a landscape project would be fabulous, it kind of gets in kind of dicey when you talk about the city retaining ownership. Like, how would the city retain ownership of?
That's why I'm thinking it's maybe not in, maybe we need another location for that
Right,
landscape idea. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think all signs seem to point to some kind of sculpture or installation, that would kind of comply with, what Tom proposed as being, an acceptable art form. David, do you have any? I'm going down the table again, so.
Right.
Sat in the wrong chair.
So my mom lives pretty close to that, and every single time I drive by it, for some reason, I see that whole outer wall as a sitting area, and I see a statue in the middle with fountains. For some reason, they'd also light up, so you'd have the kinetic as well. Like something that goes
Spectacular.
around, it might,
Like a
Yeah.
light show?
yeah, kind of like a light show. Maybe it like shoots up jets all the way around and it comes back down or something like that.
It would just be striking.
Right. I don't know what that would cost, but every single time I see that or I drive around it, I just see that there's something missing there, obviously, and something can be done to bring in the art of Tarpon or the heart of Tarpon. So just something like that just kind of gets my mind, because we do live on the water. Obviously, we're going to incorporate art into it. So how do you bring all that together?
Right.
Well, knowing too that that area has been used as a band shell, a performance center. It's been used as a water feature, as a pool, and now has been filled in and has been a garden space, more or less. So there, a lot has happened there.
Right. Exactly.
Trish?
No, I don't have any ideas. I like David's
Yeah.
idea.
While David was talking, it brought to mind, I used to work at Pepsi Cola headquarters in Purchase, New York. And they had the centerpiece, it was a sculpture garden. It had been an old polo club, and they just had sculptures all over the place. And the biggest one that was right in the middle, the building was an octagon with an open side, was this magnificent mermaid and dolphin in a fountain. It was just absolutely fabulous. I'm not saying we should do a mermaid and a dolphin, but I think the concept of something like that would be interesting to, explore at least. Bill?
Yeah, I think they're fantastic ideas. I love water. I love lights. To embrace things from the past. In York, Pennsylvania, we had taken an old foundry and it created a boat launch. And we took gears that we found out of the old foundries and made gear garden flowers out of them. And they were huge sculptures and they were placed all over the place. So just taking some pieces of what was there and incorporating it in. But I think you've got a great turn, like you said, around the road there. It's perfect. It'll be a
Yeah, I think
fantastic.
you're sitting on a gold mine there, Lucianne. I think this is going to be a primo project.
It's going to be beautiful.
I feel lucky to have fallen into it.
Robert?
There's an old saying that money makes art. And that's what we could be talking about with this thing. I mean, you can see all these grand things there. The whole structure could be a wonderful thing to surround a wonderful sculpture or a wonderful event or a wonderful 3D kind of thing or a light show or something like that. It just takes money. And the more money you can come up with, probably the grander thing you can have there. I think one thing also is that was sort of a promotion for Innes Drive or Innes Park or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And Innes, the elder, was a world-renowned Hudson River painter, landscape artist. And the kind of art that could go in there could be some kind of an homage to that. I'm not saying plant, a swamp in the middle of it,
Memorial swamp.
but there could be that there's a theme applied to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the theme of Innes's attraction to this area because of the natural fauna of Tarpon Springs, that natural floral beauty, there are a lot of sculptors that make sculptures of trees and plants and things like that. That would be a little bit different than some kind of a sculpture of a statue of a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's considered a statue of a tree, and it could be very striking to have an artificial, natural representation of what Innes was attracted to here in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my thoughts on it. But the more money you can find for it, the grander it is.
Right.
And
Well-
you'll also attract artists that will be really, really intrigued by that.
Mm-hmm.
In different ways. I mean, I was working in a mosaic studio in Germany, and they also do art glass. And two world famous artists were there, doing a piece for Princeton University, and it really included photographing on glass. And the photograph though was embedded into the glass in a structural way, not just gluing something onto it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a series of just close-ups of different trees of different colors, creating different angular structures that you could walk into and around, and as you walked around it. And it was a very simple process, a very simple concept with a real intense kind of attractiveness to it.
That sounds fascinating.
This was the Starnes twins
Mm-hmm.
at Princeton, and they were working on that when Carol and I were there working on our project. So, it would be a way to honor the Innes connection to that, why we would put something there. It's a drive-by mostly. I mean, Carol and I walk our dog by there every Sunday. That's our Sunday long walk to go around there, and we always speculate about that. We go there because of Innes. We like being part of George Innes.
Mm-hmm. That sounds fascinating. Michaela, last but not least?
That's okay. I love the idea of some kind of water feature incorporated that brings the water from the bayous and all of that into the land and possibly having maybe some of the more abstracted foliage, plants, tree kind of sculptural aspects. But I agree with Robert that in order to do this well, it's going to be an expensive project. And so we really need to decide as a committee if we want to really make a big splash or do lots of little things all over the place. I think this would be great to have something larger that really puts us on the map. I do have a stupid question, but what is the actual street address for this park? Because I was trying to look it up and I couldn't find the actual street address for it.
The street address for the property is 115 North, no, 115, yes, 115 North Park Avenue.
Ah, okay, that's why I couldn't find it on when I was looking it up. Okay, thank you. That way I wanted to go ahead and walk the area again and see more ideas, but I think the idea of looking at the property and coming up with some brainstorming ideas that we can submit to Diane would probably be a good idea, that we would have something really concrete to look at when we get together again.
Okay. Well, Lucy Ann, thank you for doing all that legwork, especially clearing all of, well, as and Diane, of course, you know, getting all of that legal legwork done. That's a huge contribution. But this is a really, really exciting project. And I think echoing what Michaela just said, I think this is something maybe we might want to throw all of our darts at. And it might be interesting.
As you submit your ideas to Diane, bounce some budget figures around too, please.
Right. The other thing we might explore, and again, this is, you know, might be a question for Tom Trask, so I'm going to set you a task of trying to get another phone call through. I wonder if we could entertain or accept any kind of corporate sponsorships or contributions.
You know, I think everybody should, and I'm just going to throw this out, you know, I would say before we meet every month, you might want to read through the ordinance again, you know, just to refresh your memory and the guidelines, because I believe I read something just recently in there that the Public Art Committee could accept, you know, donations from other, you know, organizations. So everybody, if you would please, you know, just go ahead and look at the ordinance in your notebooks and stuff when you get a chance, and see if, and I'll look into that too. But I do believe there is, you know, the possibility of doing that. So, you know, and maybe it's premature until we know what the budget is, but it would be good to know whether we could seek outside funds if necessary.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and I
we could-
believe it's true.
Echoing what Robert said, we could look for Pinellas County Medici family. So, okay, so I think we've got a lot of exciting work to do here. This is really fantastic. Okay, the next item on the agenda, unless anybody has any other comments or about the Innis project, I think we pretty much covered it.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you,
Lucianne
yes.
and Diane. Okay, what I wanted to do next is to codify and confirm the PAC policy regarding murals on private property. I know there's been some questions about it. The Artist Alley mural project, which we poured a lot of time and effort into, was canceled by the seemingly insurmountable liability insurance issue that made these projects untenable. At a prior meeting of the PAC, a decision was made to restrict PAC projects to city-owned property. And another consideration is that many property owners and businesses have already privately contracted with artists to paint murals on their buildings. And to publicly fund other businesses would be, you know, would be or may be perceived as unfair. So I just wanted to kind of get it solidly on the record through a motion and a second and a vote that we're going to restrict projects, especially mural projects, to public property. Diane?
Can we broaden this and have some discussion before we do that? Because I feel like at this point, we shouldn't just limit it to murals. I think we need to, you need to decide whether you're going to allow any kind of public art committee project on private property, period. Because that, when opportunities come up, someone, approaches one of you or comes in with a proposal to us, we will know right away whether or not you're going to allow that, or you're just going to concentrate on, city-owned property. So if you could broaden it a little bit from, any art project, public art project, as not just murals, I think it would help us out moving forward. That's just my opinion. I'll open that to discussion with you.
Okay, well, what I'm concerned about is that it might affect something like the Innis project. I think there's a difference between a mural project, which is painted on a wall, which becomes part of the structure, and something like a mural or an installation, which, as Lucy Ann outlined in Trask's thing, that it can be reclaimed and removed. You can't really do that with a mural because you'd have to take the whole wall down. So, that's really, where I thought this was coming from, but, I'd like to get, comments and discussions about it. Anyone?
Yes. May I say something?
Sure.
Okay, the murals on public or private properties is something that hits close to home. A couple of committee members were not part of the committee yet when last January, I wasn't formally part of the committee then either. I submitted a mural on behalf of my husband, and the Public Art Committee approved it. It was in negotiations with the contract, but it was meant to be on a private wall in the sponge docks. And
I don't know if we can discuss this because it might present a conflict of interest.
no, I'm not talking about, it's a dead project, but the fact of the matter is that it was initially approved. Then my husband got hit by a car while he was on a bicycle, something that's going to trial only later on this month. And so he had asked to see if he could put the project on hold, and he was asked to resubmit. And when he resubmitted, he was told, oh no, you can't do that anymore, even though he'd gotten the approvals from the building owner, because we no longer do this. Even though at the PAC meeting, when we discussed it, the reason we talked about not doing this is because of the liability insurance. And the proposal was going to always include him covering the liability insurance. So initially, the reason why I understood the committee saying that, oh no, we're not working with private walls is because we can't afford the liability insurance, or artists can't afford the liability insurance for small projects. However, for larger projects, if the artist is covering the liability insurance, at least from that meeting, my impression was that yes, we could still proceed if the PAC approves the project. And then that's always another thing. So if we're now saying, oh no, we can't work with private properties, then I do think we need to be consistent, because the PAC approved that initial project and then changed their mind. And that doesn't seem entirely consistent. So I'd like a larger policy, like Diane pointed out, to make sure that we're not just picking and choosing. The works still have to be approved by the PAC on their own merit. But we should decide whether or not we will never do things on private properties. We will never do wall things on private properties. We'll never do other things on private properties or not. Because if the artist is willing to cover the liability insurance out of the project money, then I think it's possible that we can proceed and look at the project on its own merit every single time.
How do you address the fact that it might be perceived as being unfair by other property owners who have paid privately for murals.
Would they not think it's unfair if the Ennis property gets some big splashy project that's paid for by PAC money? It's still private property. Just because the public is allowed to walk their dogs near there doesn't mean that it's not a private, it's the same consideration. So I think we should decide one way or the other. Are we going to allow this and look at each project on its merits, as long as the artist is willing to cover the liability insurance? Or are we going to say, no, we're only working with public places, in which case the Ennis Park project would be one that would be moot?
Lucianne?
I have a question of clarification, Michaela. I remember approving the project initially. I don't ever remember a submission, and maybe I wasn't here, but I'm unclear on that process of events.
Okay, if you don't mind me explaining briefly, I'd be glad to do so. Kevin had gotten the approval from the committee to proceed with the mural project in the Sponge Docks. He had designed it, he'd gotten the approval. He was working out the details with Tom Trask as to how to do this, and then COVID hit. So then he was looking at maybe it would be safer to work with the photo process, so you could paint the painting at home and have it put on the building without being exposed to lots of people with COVID at the early part of the pandemic. And then he was on a bicycle ride and a lady hit him. And that was just the last straw. So he said, you know, I can't deal with this on top of all of the other things that were happening at work. And so he asked to put the project on hold. He was told he can put it on hold, but he would have to resubmit it. And so he said, okay, I'll resubmit it. And in October, he had contacted the building owner again. The building owner said, no, we're still good to go, but I'd like you to do it on the other side of the building. So Kevin redesigned the project for the other side of the building. Then as a courtesy, he called Joan to say, hey, I'm going to resubmit the project. You know, I've got everything worked out. I'm getting bids for the insurance because the previous insurance bid had elapsed. And Joan told him that no, he can't resubmit because now the Public Art Committee is no longer accepting projects on private property. And so he didn't get to resubmit, even though it was approved by the committee initially. So that's what happened.
Any other questions?
You see where this becomes a problem, because, you know, one of the things that was made pretty evident, you know, by that when we're doing it on private property, there's got to be two contracts. There's got to be one with the artist, and then there's got to be one with the building owner. And so Tom Trask is creating two different contracts, which both parties have to agree to in order for anything to move forward. So one of the things that simplifies it by keeping it on city property is that, you know, it's city property. And so it's just one contract with the artist, you know, to move forward. But when all these other opportunities come into play, like the Riverside project and things like that, you know, that's going to be two different contracts, and it's going to be pretty lengthy, you know, kind of thing. And so I don't know, I feel like we're in a situation where you're going to have to, I don't know if you want to make it on a case-by-case basis or what, but just so that I can be of assistance moving forward with this, you know, city involved, I just wanted to see if you would maybe discuss this and make a decision as a committee, you know, to move us forward so that we're all on the same page, basically. Not meaning to open up a can of worms, but, you know, it's like we have one policy, and then how are we going to do that moving forward, kind of thing? Or do you want to change anything? So just put it out there.
If I remember correctly, and I may not, this kind of came to a head when we were trying to do the Artist's Alley. And there was so much effort put into, trying to make something happen there. And I think that was the pullback, and the comment was made, that we should be looking at the public buildings owned by the city of Tarpon Springs as the target for the majority of these, to simplify and move some
Exactly.
of these things forward. So I guess the real question, we kind of went through a series here, but the real question is, going forward, how do we want to look at public art on private property? And is that's what you?
Or if you want to pursue it that way, or just leave it on city property. I think you should just go down and get everybody's opinion, just kind of.
Okay, David, you're in the jump seat again.
Right. I agree upon doing it case by case based upon its merit. I do agree with that. But like I said, I'm new to this whole deal, so I don't know what we've encountered in the past. But I do agree that you don't have full control over the project if it is on private property, and that there could be some convolution unless it's in the contract or however that goes. But there could be, in addition to that, that the property owner also helps pay for part of the project as well. There could be that option. So I do see that there, but that's based upon the time that I spent with you guys so far.
Trish?
Well, I don't see any problem with, if the owner of a property agrees and it's approved by the PAC, the project, and the artist can cover the insurance, I can't see a problem with that.
Right. See, the only other factor that, because I've run into it in the past, if you have an entire community that's privately paid to have murals painted on their buildings, and then all of a sudden one building is getting a mural that's paid for by public funds, I mean.
We're kind of projecting things that may or may not happen. That was their choice to.
Well, I would think there would have to be a reason why the Public Art Committee would want to see public art on that particular location, or what that would be of.
Exactly.
So I think that would maybe make it a little bit different than if someone just decides they want to put a mural on their private building. That's their call, and they pay for it. If we as a committee decide we want a piece of art right here because geographically that's a location that we want to present some public art, and this is what we would like to see, then we have more control in it. And I think therein lies the funding, justification.
Right, and we wanted the Artist Alley specifically, for beautification of the city and taking an area that is blighted
Right.
and making something really attractive out of it, which would benefit the city.
Right.
This was our whole focus on
Right, it was an
that.
assemblage of murals, as Trish said, in a blighted area.
Yeah.
So, and it was on the backs of buildings, and it would, created a
Multiple,
walkway.
property owners. I mean, it was just a huge lift, and
Right.
it was overwhelming.
Right, and the thing is, there were artists that were contacted, and artists that had, come up with, drafts, they had done work on proposed art for a lot of these buildings, and, it just went away. So, I don't think that because, a project had moved along, it necessarily meant that it was going to be, kind of, brought to fruition, because none of these other projects were either. And, Jules, who's no longer on the committee, was the one who spearheaded it, but I know at least 2 artists and 2 buildings and property owners who were just all set to go when everything just sort of caved in on itself. And, the
And
thing.
that was based on contracts and insurance, though, correct? Those were the stumbling blocks.
Right,
Okay.
right. And the thing is that basically what happened was because the projects were of limited monetary, reimbursement, it kind of knocked them out of the park with the insurance. And, the other thing you have to consider too, at the end of the day, even if we approve a project, it still has to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. Maybe we could just forget about this and then, let the Board of Commissioners make the ultimate decision as to whether a project would go forward. But I still have, real reservations about doing something like a mural simply by the nature of it being permanently adhered to a private building. I've just had professional experiences in other phases of my life that just show that this is not a good idea. One example is here in Tarpon Springs was Elizabeth Indiano's. Her mural was just simply painted over. What if we spend, $10,000 on a mural and the property owner decides he's going to paint it over because he likes the color green all of a sudden? We have no recourse. That's the other downside to doing things on private property. We really don't have any control over something
It is.
after making a sizable investment in it.
Yeah.
We have control over public property because we could just say, dear whomever, manager or director, we don't want you to paint over the barn.
Yeah.
So, Robert, did you raise your hand? Or?
Oh, it was so long ago, I forgot what I was going to say. But I think the thing about murals is the one thing that I understand about them is they're not permanent. Sometime they're going to have to be, one, either refurbished, which is another whole contract all over again, or painted over and somebody else puts one on it. And I think that's the thing about the danger about these big mural projects, like in St. Petersburg. They really tout their mural project. Now they're going to have to cancel some of those out, or they don't have any more room. And they have to work out some kind of deal with public-private in that. And the thing about a public art commission like we are is that in a town the size of Tarpon Springs, we're liable to run out of public property. And we're going to be forced to sort of, if we want to continue being an art council, to work more with the private sector. And there has to be some kind of an understanding there, and whether this council gets more powerful, but we can't because of the city commission. They are the ultimate deciders on this thing, unless we can convince them that there is a threshold to meet for doing private murals in the city. And what kind of incentives do you give? It's almost like in big cities, they trade air rights. It's an abstract thing, but it's something that developers really understand and covet, is having air rights. And so the thing, like the federal project, federal or public, a lot of big public projects, 1% of construction is supposed to go to the arts in some way or another. But that's something that's been worked on and agreed upon. I mean, we don't have that kind of clout here to do anything this way. So in some ways, I think, yes, they want to take the burden on themselves, let them have the burden. I mean, we can make recommendations, and I think that's who we are. And the intricacies of this, of public-private, how many contracts are involved, all that kind of stuff, maybe is a case-by-case involvement, rather than to do it blanket. So you don't have this issue of a project being started And then for some unforeseen thing, I don't know how the contract was written, but there's always things in it about the artist not being able to continue for some unforeseen reason, force majeure, that kind of stuff. There's provisions in it, there's contingencies, and the fact that this proposal had to be resubmitted and start all over again, where it was already in the pipeline, I don't know whether the contract, dealt with that or not, but I think these kind of things happen. For art projects take a long time. Things can happen within it. I mean, there's, Bill, you're in contact with somebody that you can't get in contact with. I mean, how does the contract work that way? I mean, that person is backing out of the project. I guess the contract's saying that they are not able to fulfill their contract in a way that's not based on any kind of accident or act of God or whatever that is. So it's complex. And, if we're in an advisory role and not making the final decision on this, we don't have the power to really work this out, the intricacies of this in such a way. I think what we can do is we can say, this is the best project we can see for this, and this is what we'd like to see happen. And then let the city council sort of go over that. I mean, we've watched this thing about the development up here, the housing development. I mean, that goes on forever, those committees, right? And so there's a lot of intricate ways of looking at these things that I think they can handle better than we can.
Yeah, just coincidentally, I have a good friend, Robert knows him, Richard Haas. He does Trompe l'oeil murals, and he did one in Yonkers where I was working. And back in the mid-90s, it was an over $500,000 mural. And Monday, they ripped it all down. The whole thing gone. So, okay, moving on to new business. Oh, I think what we'll do, I think the general David, I'm sorry.
No, Mrs. Oberlander,
Oh, okay.
she had her hand up.
One thing I was curious about, I heard beforehand, and it's only anecdotal, but I understand you said that the BOC has to approve the project, but isn't there a threshold of under $15,000 that makes a difference too? Could you clarify how that works?
It's still well, if it's under $15,000, it can be approved by the city manager, but for the most part, it has to go before the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
So, but I think the bottom line, judging from the comments that everybody made, and it would just simplify everything, is just do it on a project by project basis.
That doesn't help Diane's.
That's fine. I just wanted y'all to vote on what you wanted to do, whether it was going to stay private or whether you're going to open it up on a case-to-case basis.
Okay.
That's all I'm asking, just so.
Okay, do I hear a motion to,
I move that we approve projects on a
case by case?
case, thank you, case by case.
Do I hear a
basis,
second?
I second that.
David?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, so going forward, every project we will examine on a case-by-case basis.
What is the life expectancy of a mural on a wall in the environment that we have here? I know it depends on the media, it depends on the wall itself, it depends on, the angle of the sun on it.
Preparation of the wall and the weather conditions and the property of the paint and stuff like that. It's just that also they become invisible. I mean, and not just literally,
I
that they
understand.
fade away,
Right.
but you don't see them anymore.
Correct.
And there's a good case in point. Richmond, Virginia, for some reason went mural crazy, but they didn't have control of it like St. Pete does. And they were just all over the place, and you stopped looking at them. You just didn't look at them because there were so many bad ones. I mean, really just graffiti, not tagging, gang tagging on top of stuff, and things like that. It wasn't maintained, and it just became a cacophony of colors. And things. So
So is there a figure in the art world, what the life cycle of a mural would be, outside, or does that?
I don't know if there is a consensus on that. I'm not really involved in that. The only thing is I was involved in a project in New York and sort of Canada called Art Park, up in the Niagara Falls area. And it was a park where artists were brought in for the summer to build a sculpture. It was a sculpture park. And, but not everything was 3D sculpture like you would think it was. And these were all artists that were invited to come in and paid money. They stayed there or they worked there for 3 months. And the whole idea was people paid to go into the park and watch artists make art. And, but the thing is, at the end of the season, they're all torn apart. So they could start all over again the next season, right? Because the whole thing was the experience of watching art being built. It wasn't making monuments to these artists. So mural projects have that sort of as an understanding somewhere down the road. I haven't really seen anybody really deal with that. I mean, but as I said, I'm not as experienced on that as some people are.
Mhm. Okay, so I think, Diane, we've pretty much done that. We've got a,
No,
yep,
okay,
okay.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Selfie artwork. I saw an example of some cute little selfie things that were done with perspective. They're in your folder. I just thought you'd like to see them. I don't think we should consider doing them here in Tarpon, but I just thought they were interesting. Okay, Diane, I'm turning it over to you for the next item.
Oh, okay. Based on your ordinance, we are supposed to elect a chair and a vice chair every January meeting. So Joan has served and she's done an outstanding job. And I just wanted to let you all know ahead of time that she could be reelected, but only the members, so the 5 of you are eligible to be a chair and a vice chair. Also, I just wanted you to know that the chair does interact with city personnel pretty regularly, as Joan has done. She, they run the meetings, and they also have to give a presentation in front of the Board of Commissioners every year with updates on your budget and your current projects. And then the vice chair, of course, steps in when the chair is not available for whatever reason. So before we do any voting, I wanted to ask the current regular members if you have an interest in being the chair, if you would raise your hand. Okay, so I see Lucy Ann and I see Joan. Okay, so would one of the regular members want to make a nomination of each of these candidates? Yes.
Yes, I would like to nominate Joan as to continue as chair.
Okay, do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, and do I have a nomination for Lucy Ann
For vice chair?
for chair? Because we have 2 people that are interested. So then I guess we're going to continue with Joan as the chair. Let's take a vote. If everyone wants Joan to remain as the chair of the committee, if they would please raise their hand. Okay, great. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
I don't know
thank
if
you.
it's
And so-
congratulations or condolences.
And then we also need a nomination for the vice chair. Yes.
I'd like to nominate Lucy Ann as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Second.
And a vote for Luciana's vice chair. Okay, thank you. Congratulations, Luciana. Okay, great. City announcements. One of the things, I think I already told you all about the Florida Association of Public Art Professionals. And in addition to the call out to artists that they're putting up on their newsletter for us, I sent them information about our storybook time and NIAD, on the NIAD installations, and also about the illuminated art boxes. So we should have pictures in their newsletter, on those things as well. So that is great. And also from St. Kate, those are the people who do the maintenance on our statues. One of the things that they were looking into is the bench. They talked to a lot of the places that do boating kind of maintenance, and I guess the shellac or whatever that product was that they used. The people would say they put it on every week. It's kind of a special marine thing that they use for boats. So St. Kate is, they ordered a specialty one, which is, a lot higher grade, that will last a long time, because we don't want them out here every week. So that was kind of back ordered because of the holidays. So he told me that it is coming in on Friday. And so they're hoping to be out here to do the maintenance on the statues either next Thursday or Friday, which is the 21st or 22nd of January. So they'll be out here
Okay.
doing that
And I
maintenance.
gather since it's routine maintenance and it's within our budget, that you could just go ahead with the payment when the invoice comes?
Yeah, you approved it at the last meeting, so
Right.
we'll just move forward with that. And that's the only city announcements I have.
Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda for the, I guess it's the February meeting?
Lucine?
Lucianne?
Yeah, based on our discussion of the murals and private property, I think it's time that we look at the provision that we have, that we will entertain proposals from artists.
Mm-hmm.
We might want to spend some time talking about taking hold of that process. And one of the ideas I had, and it actually came when I was talking with other cities and how they handled insurance. A lot of them have a specific period of time each year in which they take proposals from artists.
Mm-hmm.
We might want to tie proposals to locations that we've identified and say, okay, in May of 2021, we're going to take proposals from artists for a public art project budgeted at $15,000 for this corner. And that might alleviate some of the confusion about our,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know, when I put the mask on, I get stupid. So. But just seems that might eliminate a lot of misunderstanding when we have to turn down a project, or that we guided a little bit more from the beginning.
That's actually a very good solution. It's a very good solution. I think it bears more discussion. Yeah, if we identify the location and then ask for proposals.
Yeah, then, a glass artist can propose.
Right, instead of shotgunning everything,
Yeah.
with, okay. So Marissa, did you get that for the agenda item for the next, okay?
I'll try to write something up.
Okay. Anybody else, agenda items for the next meeting? Anyone? The next regular meeting is going to be Wednesday, February 10th at 2 p.m. back here. It is 3:35, and do I hear a motion to adjourn? Trish, second. Bill? Meeting is adjourned. Oops.